Ah, damn it. Did I really lose the footage I took for this? Oh well, there's no way I'm restarting and losing my progress in this game, so sorry, but it looks like we're devolving back into still images. So then, moving right along, hi, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and this is the Backlog. This week, I got around to a game I've been meaning to play for a while, Little Nightmares 2. I played the first game a few years back after a YouTuber I watched did a video on it and it piqued my interest. I don't normally do horror games. When I was young, I was banned from them and horror movies because my parents thought that they would be too scary for me, and when I was old enough to seek them out myself, I didn't bother because I hadn't cultivated an interest in them. Oddly enough though, while I never developed the fondness for the scary, I did find one for the creepy, probably due to being allowed to watch Beetlejuice and the Brave Little Toaster. So yeah, just looking at the Little Nightmares games, it should be obvious why it caught my eye. So, let's start with the first. In it, you play as Six, a small girl in a yellow raincoat, who is stuck on a ship where something sinister is going on. What specifically, I won't spoil, since more and more becomes clear as you go along and trying to piece things together is part of the fun. As you travel along, you advance by solving puzzles and interacting with the environment. Even more memorable than that, though, are the enemies you encounter. Each individual or group lurks around a particular area, and you have to outsmart and avoid them. These enemies are super creepy, having strange proportions and oversized skin. The uncanny valley is strong here, them definitely being an approximation of humans, but coming across as more alien, almost as if they were other creatures just dressing up as a person, using discarded parts of one to make a play at being a human. Checkpoints were scattered frequently throughout, so getting caught and killed or just dying on your own from a slip-up wouldn't set you back too far, but the enemies were so disturbing, or seeing Six just ragdoll makes this something you desperately want to avoid. I loved the game and beat it twice, the first just beating it normally, and the second time being to find the extra secrets and get a few extra trophies. There was also a DLC campaign, which had a different protagonist and was meant to take place parallel to the main game. It introduced a few new mechanics, such as a water level and using NPC allies to solve puzzles, and something akin to combat. While I liked the first storyline more, it wasn't by much and both were solid experiences that I have a lot of love for. Which brings us to the second game. I beat the last game twice and I couldn't be bothered to do this one once. So what's different? The basics are the same, you traveling through areas, solving puzzles, and avoiding creatures of questionable humanity. And while you have a new protagonist again, Six returns and travels with you to help with various challenges, though you do get left on your own from time to time. That's fine, and the AI works well enough to where Six isn't a hindrance. No, the big thing is just the up level of challenge in this game. Some of the puzzles are super clever with just enough hints to piece together on your own. Others you figure out by seeing what's interactable with and how you can use different parts in conjunction with each other. And others are really obtuse. The puzzle that stands out the most in this way for me was the chess one. You had 3 pieces to move around. I played around with the room until I found a diagram with how you're supposed to arrange them, and when I did so, a wall lamp turned on. That was it though, and the door that should have opened did not. I fiddled around with the pieces for a bit. I walked out of the room to see if something had changed in the adjacent one. I tried looking at the diagram again to see if maybe I was viewing it from the wrong angle. I tried to see if I could move the pieces in any other way, but nothing worked. Finally, I jumped up on a desk, held the grab button while jumping around, and latched onto the lamp that had lit up that I didn't realize was within my tiny character's range, and it pulled down like a switch, finally opening the door. Maybe it should have been obvious, maybe I'm just too dumb, but that last step seemed like just one too many. And this isn't the only one like this. I fought the urge to look up videos to find solutions, but there were several times I wound up just running around, pressing buttons at things that may or may not have been interactable until something happened or a solution became apparent. I don't remember fumbling this much in the first game. And it's not just the puzzles that are a pain. There are traps scattered about. The one that I was originally going to show here involved me getting home alone, stepping on an out-of-place plank and having a bucket on a string weighted down thrown at me from the rafters, hitting me in the head and just instantly killing me. At first, they started out with hints that there was something you needed to avoid there, such as a toy being left out as an obvious bait, or the impact marks on an overturned desk saying that something would swing down. As it went on, though, some of them only gave a slightly out of place board that was the only clue that something was amiss. And when I was already in a dilapidated building, this wasn't that big of an indicator. I think just before I left the place, there was one trap like this just before I entered the room where I was to exit through the window, which this only served to waste a few seconds and felt more like just a way for the game to screw with me more than an actual challenge for me to pick out on my own. There are also times where enemies will just jump scare you and almost certainly kill you the first time you see it. In the previous game, when something popped out like that, it would be when you were in the middle of already doing something that was conducive to you getting away and all you had to do was just recommit to the action. Or you would have enough leeway before the enemy spotted you to hide. Here though, you just die. You just die and you have to learn from that to avoid it the next time. Or the time after that. Or after that. Eventually. Also, combat is more prevalent here. Previously, it was very minimal and simplistic. Here, you can pick up a blunt instrument and swing it. The bludgeon is about the size of you and very awkward to use. It's slowing you down as you drag it around, and it has a lot of wind up and slow down afterwards. The enemies are all faster than you and prepare to strike from just outside your range, so to hit them, you either need to take a few steps forward and swing before they make the move themselves, or time your attack just right so that you intercept them in the middle of theirs. If you miss, you die and you have to start the sequence over again. Against one type of enemy in particular, I could pull this off slightly more than half of the time, so when the game gave me 4 of them to pull off in a row, I had to do the section over and over again until I got the perfect run. And yeah, they did this to me twice. The depth perception is also pretty bad, which makes these encounters, as well as basic platforming, a total pain. Then there are the freaky, larger enemies that are the main attraction. They are difficult to deal with. The first one has a ranged weapon, not giving you an obvious hitbox to avoid. The second has crazy peripheral vision and will just spot you sometimes, even when you think you're out of sight. The third are wonky. All of them have weird patterns that you have to learn, and the timing is not always obvious. Sometimes when I got past them, I had no idea what I did differently or how I escaped, which, rather than leaving me with a feeling of accomplishment, made me feel more confused and unhappy, like I had either lucked out or glitched out to get by. I think I died more in each of the single areas in this game than I did in total in the last. While this might sound strange to say, all the extra death actually killed the horror vibe for me. When you're not constantly dying, there's the fear of the unknown. If you're just wandering around, you're constantly on the lookout for places you can screw up and meet your doom, or keeping an eye out for something scary that can come lumbering around the corner at any minute. And when these monstrosities do come into view, you desperately want to avoid them because you don't know what will happen to you. Will they throttle you? Will they eat you? Will they just get you in their grasp and then fade to black to leave it up to your imagination? None of these things are a good time, so your main goal is to prevent them at all cost. On the other hand, if you're constantly dying, either due to unfair mechanics, very thin timing windows, or your precognition just not warning you about something beforehand, you know what'll happen. You've seen the death animation, normally several times, and there's nothing frightening that you have to imagine. It takes what should be scary and keeping you on the edge of your seat and instead makes you slump back down and turn the entire process into something boring and annoying. I started the third area genuinely disturbed with what the game was throwing my way, and then quickly became more irritated, muttering, "Go ahead, kill me, you prick. I'll just try it again." While I appreciate them trying to make the game harder and why some might think that doing so would put the player more on edge, for me, personally, it just kills any appeal this genre previously had. It might work better if the controls weren't as awkward, though. Anyway, I read that there are 5 chapters in this game, and I got to the third. You get a flashlight in this area, and the enemies will constantly move towards you in the dark. The last part I got to involved trying to get to the end of a long room as about 8 enemies, all faster than me, ran at me. Given that I had only a single flashlight beam that could only stop what was in its path for a not significant amount of time, with them coming from multiple directions, I couldn't get terribly far as more and more of them started running in my direction. After numerous tries, I did the one thing I didn't want to do in my initial playthrough and looked up a walkthrough to see if there was something I was doing wrong, only to find out that no, this part is just really hard. Even the guy doing the damn walkthrough died a few times here. In addition to that, I found out that even if I did extremely well, I was looking at least another hour and a half of playtime. Seeing as to how I had been having very little fun up until that point and would be subjected to a good amount more, I decided to shelf this game. This really hurt after how much I enjoyed the first one and how much I was looking forward to the sequel, but sometimes you just have to know when to call it quits. I might go back to it at some point, but given that I quit at the most frustrating part, at least up to that point, that sounds like a really bad idea. I don't know, I'll probably at least look up a playthrough somewhere. I was wondering if it was just me, so I looked up some reviews. Interestingly enough, the feedback for the game is largely positive, but those that did score it lower mentioned largely the same things that I did as their complaints, so while I'm in the minority in this case, I am not alone. I recommend the first Little Nightmares and the DLC if you enjoy that, but if you want to go for the second title, just keep in mind what I said. And I read through the third volume of the Japanese light novel series, No Game, No Life. With this book, I think I hate the series more than I did previously. It starts out immediately alluding to the possibility of incest. And yeah, the two main characters are more step-siblings than siblings, but they were raised as if they were blood, and given the age difference is 11 and 18, it's still pretty wrong and illegal. Then there was a lot more lolly stuff on top of that, and while the writing wasn't super coherent up until this point, it seems to have further devolved. A lot of times it not being clear who was speaking, and much of the writing reading more like a panicked stream of consciousness than actual, carefully considered language. Part of it could be editing and translating, but it's pretty bad. As I said before, the world and overall concept is super interesting, so I kinda want to read more, especially since this volume gets to the end of what they did in the anime, meaning what comes next will be new to me, but I just can't with these characters and weird fetishizations. It feels like traveling through a beautiful country, nothing but amazing scenery from one end to the other, but the whole time, people are committing crimes against humanity along the roadside and giving you a smile and a wave. You kinda want to keep going to see where you can end up, but it's probably not worth how uncomfortable you are and how much you want to do something to stop what's going on, but you know you just can't. There's a fair chance that after my current discomfort ends and I forget just how bad it was, I'll pick up Volume 4, but for now, I won't be placing it on my book order. So that does it for now. I had a kind of busy and troublesome week, so I didn't get as much done as I wanted. It started out with the last episode I put up. I put a ton of effort into it and then it just wouldn't export and upload correctly. I finally just had to go with the almost passable version, but it was still a huge disappointment. Hopefully this one goes up okay, although I am kinda worried that going forward I might have some sort of problem with something going on between the Elgato and PS4. At this point though, my house cleaning is done, my cats have received their pills, and this episode is hopefully up in one piece, so things are looking up. I even got that Zelda and Loftwing amiibo I was hunting for. Sure, the packaging is a bit beat up, and I was planning on keeping it in it since I probably won't end up using this one, but the figure is the important thing. And it looks nice. An extra $10 nice? Probably not, but my OCD must be fed, so I guess I'm satisfied that I no longer need to obsess over it. Now I just need the Metroid Dread ones. Anyway, thanks for watching, maybe subscribe if you enjoy this sort of thing, and perhaps I'll see you for the next episode.